Good day learners, I am Dr. Jayanti Dutta from Human Resource Development Center of Panjab University, Chandigarh. This is the program of environmental education and the module number is 46. The topic of this module is role of teachers training institutes in the conservation of biodiversity. And under this we are going to cover teachers training in India, training courses and programs conducted by the Teachers Training Institute, the concept of biodiversity and its introduction in education, and the role of teachers training institutes in the conservation of biodiversity. The learning objectives that will be achieved by the completion of the module is understanding the role of teachers training institutes in the professional development of teachers, to know the history of inculcation of the concepts of environment, biodiversity and conservation in education, to comprehend the processes and methods through which teachers training institutes can infuse biodiversity concepts into teachers' professional development. Teachers are the most significant agents to bring awareness, sensitivity and motivation in the upcoming generations of the communities. Through daily interventions inside and outside the classrooms, they can mold the students into responsible citizens possessing desired traits for right thinking and proper action. However, to achieve this goal, teachers themselves need to have effective tools of teaching. It must be acknowledged that though for some teachers good teaching comes naturally, others need to go through a process of training, reflection and internalization of the cognitive basis of teaching as well as the sharpening of the tools of teaching. Teachers training institutes perform this critical role of facilitating the professional development of teachers. Teachers training in India. Training of school teachers in India is regulated by the National Council for Teacher Education, that is NCTE, and executed through different teachers training institutes. The teacher training institutes in our country conduct different types of trainings pertaining to the different stages of education. Training provided to students before they enter the teaching profession is called pre-service training, while the professional training given to teachers already in service is called in-service training. The function of pre-service training is to prepare teachers for the profession in school system, and in case of in-service training, to improve the capacity of existing teachers and their continuous professional development. Thus, teachers training institutes provide a continuum of training from prospective teachers to teachers in the profession. There are different training courses and programs conducted by the teachers training institutes, and these include in the pre-service teachers training, diploma in nursery teachers training, that is called NTT, elementary teachers training ETT, bachelor of education B.Ed, and diploma in preschool education DPSC, diploma in elementary education, that is DELED, bachelor of elementary education, bachelor of education, and bachelor of education is also done through open and distance learning system leading to bachelor of education degree. There is another 4-year integrated program leading to BA B.Ed or BSc B.Ed degree. Masters of education can also be done in integrated 3 years program leading to B.Ed and M.Ed integrated degrees. Then there are diplomas in physical education, bachelor in physical education, master of physical education, diploma in elementary education and diploma in arts education, that is a visual arts program. Diploma in arts education is also there. Then in-service teachers training programs are there, which are conducted at different levels and by different agencies. The first level is at national level, and the agency which conducts them is National Council of Educational Research and Training, that is NCERT, and National University on Educational Planning and Administration, that is NUPA. At the regional level, it is done by the Regional Institutes of Education, that is REIs. At the state level, the State Council of Educational Research and Training, that is SCERT. At the district level, by the District Institutes of Education and Training, that is DIET, and at the block level by Block Resource Centers, that is BRCs, and Cluster Resource Centers, that is CRCs. My friends, history of human civilization is intertwined with the history of development of man's knowledge about environment. Learning about environment and its different components has been followed by its continuous inclusion in the educational content from olden times. In the recent era, environment is a complete discipline in itself, enriched with extensive research, and that understanding has percolated into the teaching learning content due to the realization that generations need to be sensitized about the conservation of our shared environment to achieve the goal of sustainability. Biodiversity, the diversity of all organisms living in all types of ecosystems, is one significant aspect of environment. The emergence of new market forces, materialistic living styles, and rampant consumerism witnessed during the last century has led to large-scale environmental degradation. Due to factors like pollution, degradation of forests, overexploitation of natural resources, and destruction of natural habitats, biodiversity is declining rapidly. However, conservation of biodiversity is critical not only because of its tangible value such as economic, monetary, commercial, and ecotourism, etc., but also due to its intangible worth in ethical, cultural, recreational, spiritual, and aesthetic aspects. The loss of biodiversity is increasingly becoming the cause of irreparable damage to ecosystems, leading to deteriorating human health, food insecurity, and natural disasters. It has become imperative now more than ever before to nurture and preserve the environment, to acknowledge the significance of biodiversity at the cognitive level, to acquire a reverent attitude for nature and its life forms, and bring conservation strategies into action at the behavioral level. This is possible only through the potent tool of education. These concerns have led to a resolution in December 2002 by the United Nations General Assembly, which declared the decade of 2005 to 2014 as the decade of education for sustainable development. For the promotion of the decade, UNESCO, the lead agency, developed the subject of Education for Sustainable Development, or ESD, which was implemented at different educational levels in the member countries. Biodiversity education is a significant and essential aspect of ESD. United Nations Environment Programme, Convention on Biological Diversity, Conference of Parties also identified the need for a biodiversity awareness program as a national responsibility. In India, the National Policy on Education of 1986 has highlighted the need to create consciousness and protection of environment as a value in children, with the role of teachers as change agents. The policy recognized a paramount need to create a consciousness of the environment which must permeate all ages and all sections of society, beginning with the child. It was emphasized that to create awareness of environmental concerns, it has to be integrated in the education process at all stages of education, and environmental consciousness should also inform teaching in schools and colleges. National Curriculum Framework of 2005 gives clear pointers towards concerns and issues pertaining to the environment that should be emphasized in every subject. It states that making children sensitive to the environment and the need for its protection is an important curricular concern. Awareness of environmental concern must permeate the entire school curriculum. Education can provide the necessary perspective on how human life can be reconciled with the crisis of the environment, so that survival, growth, and development remain possible. Environmental education may be best pursued by infusing its components as part of different disciplines at all levels, while ensuring that adequate time is earmarked for pertinent activities. According to NCF, students comprehend the concepts, values, ideas, and skills related to environment differently depending upon their stage. This uniqueness should be recognized and strategies should be prepared accordingly. It is prescribed that at the primary stage, it is necessary to nurture the curiosity of the child about the natural environment through exploratory and hands-on activities. At upper primary classes, children should learn principles of science in environmental preservation and the urgency of saving it from degradation through group activities, discussion with peers, surveys, organization of data, and school exhibitions. At secondary stage, activities and analysis of environmental issues, experimentation projects, etc. can be used to develop a child's critical appreciation for conservation and environmental concerns. At higher secondary stage, deep study of the subject with experiments is required to enhance problem-solving capacities. Based on these pointers, the National Council of Educational Research and Training has taken several initiatives towards environmental education. National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education of 2009, molded on the template of NCF 2005, reflects these initiatives and informs the teachers' training programs and courses, thus setting the agenda and defining the role of teachers' training institutes in conservation and of biodiversity. According to NCFTE, if teacher education institutions could be organized on right lines and become dynamic centers of progressive educational movements, the whole task of educational reconstruction would be greatly facilitated. Teachers training institutes have a very significant and potent role to play in a teacher preparation as well as in teacher motivation, especially in the context of environment education. To understand this role, let us look at the knowledge cycle, which explains the flow from knowledge creation to dissemination and propagation. The first step is that the new knowledge is generated by thinkers and academicians developing new theories and researchers working in the labs and fields, understanding processes and bringing in new concepts. These new inventions, discoveries, new thoughts and ideas are brought into the public domain through academic agencies which add to the already existing repository of knowledge of the humankind. The second step is when international bodies like United Nations, significant other national agencies like judiciary, advocacy groups, etc., identify the new knowledge as advantageous and necessary for the social welfare and make it imperative to spread it in the society. Policies, decisions, rules and law of the executive agencies of governments further facilitate the spreading of the knowledge. The first and most effective traditional level for inculcation of new knowledge is the school, where students are then taught about the new concepts. This necessitates introduction of these topics into the students' curricula. In our country, the National Curriculum Framework performs this role. For example, NCF 2005 has laid down detailed guidelines about infusing environmental education into all levels of school education. The next step is that in order to teach the students, teachers have to be prepared with adequate knowledge, effective skills and appropriate attitude to transact the new curriculum. Teacher preparation is done by having a matching curriculum with that of the student curriculum. National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education of 2009 is the template which describes and sets the standard for teacher training both in pre-service and in service in context of issues related to environmental biodiversity. And finally, when the ideas, concepts and new knowledge which needs to be inculcated into the society are launched through teacher training institutes by introducing them in the training courses and passing them on to the teacher trainees for implementation in the classrooms. The programs and courses of teacher training institutes are informed by the NCFTE 2009 and teachers are trained to sharpen their skills and clarify their attitudes to effectively carry these concepts in their teaching, learning and propagate them, aligning the training with the aims and goals framed by the national document. Teachers thus prepare then transact the knowledge in classrooms throughout the country, and the students assimilate this new knowledge and propagate it into the society through numerous roles they play as citizens. They also in turn become generators of new knowledge as scientists, researchers, thinkers and academicians, and the cycle of knowledge starts afresh. Thus, in context of perpetuating the concepts of conservation of biodiversity, teachers training institutes can act as nodal centers for dissemination of awareness, information sharing, platforms of deliberations, debates and discussions, hubs of learning, training and attainment of skills, epicenters of attitudinal and behavioral change, focal points for spreading research culture, and cornerstones for generation of novel thoughts, ideas and innovations. Nodal centers for dissemination of knowledge, awareness, information and sharing. With a well-recognized agenda in place, education for sustainable development and concepts of biodiversity conservation to be taught in schools and colleges have been introduced in the Teachers Training Institute's training agenda. NCFTE 2009 prescribes that a pedagogy course for student teachers on environmental studies should include its philosophical and epistemological foundation and recognition of environmental studies as a composite area of study that draws upon both the sciences and social sciences. Student teachers should be acquainted with children's ideas of their physical and social world so that these can later be interpreted for classroom instruction, thus helping student teachers to develop the ability to plan comprehensive units that do not compartmentalize knowledge but view it holistically. In all the Teachers Training Institute courses, the subject of environment has been introduced either as development of understanding of environment as in elementary teacher education program or the development of learners' perspective on sustainable development in higher classes. Environment and biodiversity are interdisciplinary topics in nature and are also being covered under the teaching of biology, chemistry, physics, geography, economics, sociology and political science. The role of teacher training institutes primarily is to provide the student teachers the knowledge and information on biodiversity and its conservation, and also to present it not as a standalone subject but as an integrated and inseparable part of education. The trainees should be made well aware of the basic understanding of the theme of biodiversity, including key definitions, distribution and hotspots of biodiversity, ecosystem services, species loss, the value and worth of biodiversity, habitat destruction, climate change, protected areas like national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, forest reserves, botanical and zoological parks, etc. While becoming a nodal center for dissemination of knowledge and information regarding environment and biodiversities, teacher training institutes must take the caution to present the knowledge in interconnecting, linked, inclusive and complementary manner, so that the teacher trainees develop a perspective in which environment and biodiversity are integral to human sustenance and not just irrelevant, dry disciplines. The second point is where teachers training institutes can act as platforms of deliberations, debates and discussions on biodiversity and its conservation. The domain of biodiversity and its conservation has several controversial aspects also. Its different aspects can be seen from multiple vantage points. Recognizing this flexibility, NCFTE states that the teachers need to reconceptualize citizenship education in terms of human rights and environmental education approaches too. The critical perspective of environmental education also falls within the rights perspective that asserts the role of education in sustaining a democratic social order. Some debates of biodiversity conservation practice are like whether land for nature and land for productivity should be segregated or integrated, whether there should be people-oriented approaches to safeguard biodiversity or stricter enforcement of protected area boundaries, the social political impacts of conservation, whether biodiversity and poverty eradication should be tackled together, whether biodiversity conservation should give weightage to scientific and educational foundation or social realities, ethical and aesthetic considerations also, whether we should choose development over biodiversity conservation or vice versa, and whether ecotourism helps in conservation or destruction of biodiversity, whether biodiversity conservation is emphasizing on wrong policies. The teacher needs to bring these debates into the students' consciousness and make them think on the complexities of the domain. Teachers' training can include enhancing the debating and defending skills, critical thinking skills, skills of looking at issues from multiple perspectives, negotiation skills, listening skills, communication skills of the teachers' trainees, which they can further carry back to the classrooms. Extracurricular activities organized at the teacher training institutes can help in honing these skills. The third aspect is hubs of learning, training and attainment of critical pedagogy skills. Teacher trainees are to build their knowledge base about the learner, that is learner studies, about the educational theories through education studies, about the subjects that they are going to teach through curriculum studies, and also about the ways of teaching through pedagogic studies. It is through pedagogic studies that a prospective teacher learns to teach in real classrooms, taking up all the challenges of dealing with live recipients of teaching. In the context of environment and biodiversity, not only the teachers have to have mastery in the subject, but should also be able to devise innovative transaction modalities. Teacher training institutes perform their role by adding to the teacher trainees' repertory the awareness and skill of effective interactive and student-centered learning. NCFTE 2009 has emphasized that each course would have an inbuilt field-based unit of study. Student teachers study the major characteristics of India's pluralistic makeup with the help of field interviews, collate people's experiences, and examine policy and theory. Learning spaces are structurally provided in the design of teacher education programs for drawing such connections. This method can be used for teaching about environment also. The teacher training institutes can make student teachers undertake projects complemented with workshops, seminars, assignments, and group discussions around issues and concepts studied in theory. Workshops to enhance effectiveness in 3 educational domains specially designed to teach environmental and biodiversity issues can also be conducted by the teacher training institutes. Fourthly, the institutes can also act as epicenters of attitudinal and behavioral change. Out of the several challenges to stop the environmental degradation of the planet, behavioral challenge is the most difficult one. Behaviors originating from attitudes such as materialism, greed, consumerism, acquisitiveness, disrespect for nature, intolerance are responsible for the crass erosion of nature and destruction of biodiversity. One of the main aims of environmental education is attitudinal change of the students to transform them into responsible global citizens. This is true for teacher training also. The training should aim towards the attitudinal change of the trainee teachers. However, transformation in the affected domain does not happen overnight. Short training programs of 3 to 7 days cannot strive to achieve the goal. However, longer in-service programs such as 3 weeks or 4 weeks should include the objective to inculcate habits and attitudes geared towards biodiversity conservation. The pre-service courses have the inbuilt structure to work on the affective domain of the trainee teacher, and the institutes should develop effective mechanisms for this. In view of the many-sided objectives of teacher education, the evaluation protocol of the institutes need to be comprehensive and provide due place for the evaluation of attitudes, values, dispositions, habits, and hobbies, in addition to the conceptual and pedagogical aspects through appropriate quantitative as well as qualitative parameters, as per the NCFTE. National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education has very clearly stated that in the present ecological crisis promoted by extremely commercialized and competitive lifestyles, teachers and children need to be educated to change their consumption patterns and the way they look at natural resources. For this, teachers need to be equipped to understand these issues and incorporate them in their teaching. As teachers develop curriculum materials and learning experiences informed by the perspectives of sustainable development, they will also learn through actual participation the skills to identify and process the specifics for the purposes of meaningful curriculum transaction, and will be able to inculcate and reinforce the values of environment and its protection, living in harmony within oneself and with nature in their students. The institutes need to include theories of attitudinal correction such as heuristic systematic model of information processing, cognitive dissonance theory, and concepts like belief rationalization, comparative processing, etc. for the teacher trainees to build a strong cognitive foundation. From this, they can be trained to boil down the theories into teaching strategies and pedagogic action to be implemented in the classroom setup. Trainees will learn and develop confidence in performing such action aimed towards transformation of the students from apathetic individuals to persons having sensitization towards biodiversity and environmental issues, which they will consider as serious and indispensable for a prosperous world and not merely as empty slogans or cliched subjects. The institutes can also act as focal points for the spreading of inquiry and research culture. Research is not an isolated activity to be practiced only at the highest level of educational pyramid. Article 51A in the 42nd Amendment of the Constitution states that it shall be the duty of every citizen of India to develop the scientific temper, humanism, and a spirit of inquiry and reform. The development of this spirit of inquiry should be initiated at a very early stage with the development of critical thinking, an open mindset, and knowledge of the organized process of research. Teachers themselves need to be research oriented and should consider research an integral part of their engagement with education. They should thus be prepared by apprising them of the knowledge of research methodology, by inculcating them with the keenness to indulge in research themselves. They should also develop expertise and confidence to initiate young students into simple research techniques of observation, survey, basic statistics, and pattern recognition. Evidence indicates that such action research, in which teachers, students, and parents collaborate in conducting participatory and caring inquiry in the classroom, school, and community, leads to the building of knowledge democracies, and teacher action research can empower the active and ongoing inclusion of non-traditional voices in the research process. Recognizing the significance of research orientation for teachers, NCFTE rightly emphasizes that engagement with research relating to different aspects of young children's learning in languages, mathematics, environmental education, history, geography, followed by reflective discussion, records of observation, analysis, can form an important part of developing sound pedagogic understanding of the elementary school teacher. While the secondary and senior secondary school teachers will need to engage with deeper epistemological questions of the disciplines they specialize in. NCFTE prescribes that teacher training should be given the opportunity to learn, to keep observational records, to analyze their observation, and interpret reality within varying theoretical and experimental frameworks. Such engagement through structured classroom-based research projects develops in them several skills to function as a researcher, thus equipping them to use mechanisms that enable reflective practice. All these recommendations are very useful in creating a culture of curiosity and inquiry, which leads to a conducive environment for research. The institutes can thus perform their role as focal points to spread this culture through their teacher trainees. A critical examination of and engagement with teaching methods such as concept formation, inquiry-based teaching, problem solving, discovery, and activity-based learning and related terms can go a long way in making him or her a reflective teacher. Finally, the teacher training institutes can also act as cornerstones for generation of novel thoughts, ideas, and innovations. The subject of conservation of biodiversity needs a lot of research and technology input, knowledge generation, academic contribution, and innovative thoughts. We need to raise, through the teaching of our students, an army of scientists, academicians, thinkers, engineers, policymakers, decision takers, technologists, and executives who would develop strategies and implement plans and policies. To develop such students, the teachers need to equip themselves with the proficiency and dexterity to identify, develop, and nurture lateral thinking, creativity, and initiative. Training institutes can support the teachers by training them in methods to develop thinking skills and sharpen creativity. Teachers can also be made aware about their motivational and inspirational role in the development of students into personalities having curiosity, courage, and appetite to take risks. The institutes act as platforms where salient ideas are brought up and discussed, by which teachers develop the confidence to transact them to the students in the classroom setting. Training institutes also perform their role of transforming teachers from merely educators to change agents by clarifying their core values of courage, truth, risk-taking, and comfort with non-traditional concepts and ideas. Creativity and thinking skills are not directly a part of teaching curricula of institutes. However, the institutes can develop training methods and use innovative strategies in transaction of the curricula to teach them these strategies also. The agenda of the in-service training programs is the continuous professional development of teachers and updating them about new developments in discipline-based content, as well as training them in novel pedagogical skills. All the above mentioned roles that the institutes play for pre-service courses also holds true for in-service training programs. Special programs for senior faculty can be held in themes such as challenges of teaching environment education, out-of-classroom strategies to inculcate environment conservation values, experiences of teaching environment and biodiversity conservation, local stories of environmental protection, etc. The teacher training institutes can achieve the objective of professional development of teachers who are attuned towards the academic part of the topic by enhancing their competency to interlink the theory with their own local and personal experiences. Sharing of personal experiences enriches the narrative and engages all the trainees as it gives respect to the teacher's own experiences. This strategy works best for training groups with senior teachers. On the other hand, senior teachers need mentoring in handling novel modalities which need technological intervention, handling ICT, using social media for spreading awareness, and sensitization about environment and biodiversity are such themes which can be included in the Institute's in-service training agenda. Training teachers to conduct extracurricular activities with more finesse and effectiveness is needed to get teachers out of the lethargic rut, both mentally and physically, in which many of them tend to fall. The Teachers Training Institutes can perform a very important role in preparing and developing teachers who are not only academic leaders but who can also perform leadership roles in the critical domain of environment and biodiversity conservation. There is no doubt that environment issues need to be addressed with much more urgency, innovativeness, and with a collective fervor, and there is no other way than education to achieve this goal for the humankind. The Teacher Training Institutes are portals through which all teachers have to pass in their journey of transformation from students of education to guardians of the globe. Thank you.